Good to go.
Got it. And I did a webinar a couple of months ago that went over kind of the basics of DOMO, identifying the fields in your, how to identify, how to track and easily identify the fields in your Filevine that you're going to be pulling into DOMO, how to set up those reports, how to connect it to the S3 bucket, and then how to connect the S3 bucket to DOMO. So there's actually a recording on our website of that you can access if that's where you're at in your Periscope journey. So if that's where you're at in your Periscope journey, you would just come to vineskills.com and go to learn and come down to webinars. And that webinar has, oh, sorry, it's not webinars, it's free help.
Videos.
Yeah, so you're going to go to the past recorded sessions. You'll see my face. It's a terrible picture of me. It's from October 30th. So that would be super helpful for you if you're just getting your start in Periscope. Today, we're going to focus on what we do after we've done all that initial setup, right? So we have done a template audit of our Filevine template. We've decided what data points already that we need in order to pull in to DOMO to make our reports work. We've already connected everything, and now we are in DOMO, and we need to connect we've already connected our a lot of our data, but we need to set up formulas so that we can actually use data. So if you've already pulled your reports, then you've probably found that you're having a hard time filtering or setting criteria for your DOMO reports because that data point didn't explicitly live within Filevine. Or the way you reported it on Filevine was by adding criteria like a task report, like only pulling a list of incomplete tasks. So when we set up our reports in Filevine to pull them into DOMO, we should be setting those up with 0 criteria. And the reason for that is, and please excuse our mess here. This is our sandbox, and we have a number of people who are in here demoing things, setting things up on our end. So we have a ton of data sets in here. So yours will not look like this, but with your Periscope package, you get, I believe, 15 data sets. And I'm sorry, good question, Santino. DOMO is the actual program. Periscope is the version you've licensed from Filevine. DOMO itself can connect to, hey Greg, DOMO itself can connect to pretty much any application out there. But the version you've purchased is a much less expensive version through Filevine where you're connecting just Filevine. So they call that Periscope, that version of Periscope. If you have a need to connect more than just Filevine, you want to connect your QuickBooks Online, Ring Central, Facebook, whatever it is. There's a little bug flying around me that's making me crazy. You would actually need a full DOMO license. And that is something that your account manager at Filevine can help arrange for you. You would still go through your account manager at Filevine because they can get you a discount on a full license. They have a connection there. So reach out to your AM or even me, and I can help make the connection to the right people at Filevine if you need that. So we're in DOMO. You bought Periscope, but it's in DOMO. So here's good. So here's where your data sets live. Your Periscope license comes with, I believe, 15 data sets. So if you think about Filevine reporting and how many Filevine reports you have with various criteria to help you visualize different things or report on different things, like you probably have dozens, if not hundreds of reports in Filevine. Well, when you're limited to 15 data sets, which equates to 15 Filevine reports, you can't pull in reports with that, you can't apply criteria to the reports in Filevine and pull them into DOMO because you will far exceed your data set limit. So what we do is we identify the reports we need, we put in all the fields, and we add them without any criteria. So if you want to report on outstanding tasks, but you also want to see how many tasks your users have created over a specific time period in the past, you would simply simply run a task list report, not applying any criteria, but including archived cases. We add the criteria in Filevine using something called a beast mode. So you will typically have anywhere from 5 to 10 data sets that you're pulling into Filevine. You'll maybe have a task report, an audit report, which by the way is fantastic because as you know, in Filevine, you're limited to 62-day periods to look at audit activity. And even that, if you are a high volume law firm, is going to crash your computer if you try to run it. And if you do manage to run it, you'll be unable to export it because Excel will only pull, I think, 30,000 rows or something like that. So pulling that audit report into DOMO and then have it, basically you have it run every 24 hours and you just have it append, you will eventually be able to see months, years worth of data, audit data in Filevine, which is so much easier than running series of 62-day audit reports in Filevine looking for whatever it is that you're looking for, right? You'll also have probably a report for wherever you're tracking your fees, whether that be a time and billing report for time and billing firms, or perhaps a settlements or negotiations report for contingency firms. You'll have a report perhaps for a medical records section if you do injury law to track any number of things, including how many medical records requests various staff members are sending, how long it's taking on average for them to get records back in, and then perhaps even an insurance section report if that's where you're tracking your initial demands being sent out to get a count by paralegal of how many demands are being sent over any particular time period. Each report that you build in Filevine is a data set in DOMO. Now those reports in Filevine, like I was referencing, don't always have the data in a form that we can work with it or it's usable within DOMO. So we need to set up something called beast mode. So I have a number of various examples of boards here. A lot of these are the sample boards that you get that Filevine makes available to you as something that you can attach your data to. I would like to first point out that I think in the instructions for setup that you get with your DOMO, you have the option to, what do we have connected to a card here? They show you that you have an option to come into the data set, go to cards, and switch them in mass to a different data set. It is certainly a possibility and an option. It is not one that I recommend. Your beast modes are connected to the data set, not to the card. So when you come into these boards, these cards that Filevine has made available to you as samples in case you want to use them, and I have to tell you, for a personal injury law firm, they cover almost every scenario a pre-lit firm could consider or would want at least to start with initially. If you swap them out in mass, those beast modes are connected to the demo data that is initially in those cards. You will lose them if you swap them out in mass. I prefer to swap them out one by one. It just makes it easier, and you get, that way you can have a screen, one screen, the sample, and then the other screen, you can be in the same card and swap out your data set. So you could still have, you could still reference the beast modes that are connected to the sample data because it won't update until you refresh your screen, right? So you can have the one that's the sample open, make the changes in another screen, and once you get your beast modes right and the data looks right in the preview, hit save then. And then when you refresh the card on both screens will be with your data. But like I said, you'll be able to go back and forth to review your the beast modes, so you'll have access to those, which is a lot easier when you're first starting off than trying to make sense of the beast modes themselves, because that is probably where the biggest learning curve is with DOMO, is understanding those beast modes. If you have some experience with Excel, The logic is similar, so it may make sense to you, but if you don't, then it can be really confusing, and there's a lot of a big learning curve there. So what do we do when we're trying to apply criteria, but we don't have the specific data point? So we'll go back to my task example, right? If we come into our analyzer here, and you'll see within this card, we have incomplete tasks, total overdue, total due today, and total pending, so not due today. And when we're pulling in a report with all tasks, both complete and incomplete, and archived cases, how do we separate these? How do we create these extra columns, right? Like how do we tell DOMO to separate these into different columns? And the answer to that is beast mode. So you'll see we have a number of beast modes down here where we have put in little formulas to help DOMO know which ones are overdue, which ones are due today, and which ones are due in the future. And which ones are complete versus not complete, right? So the first thing we want to do is weed out completed tasks. So let's look at our incomplete task beast mode. So like I said, we're bringing in all tasks, both complete and incomplete. And in our dashboard, this particular dashboard, we only want to see incomplete tasks, whether they're past due or due in the future. So what we're going to do is enter a formula called case when completed date is null than 1, else 0 end. This is very simply translated to when completed date is empty, then count it. If it's not empty, then don't count it. So completed date, obviously a task will only have a completed date once it has been clicked complete in Filevine. So we can weed out all of those with a completed date to only look at those incomplete tasks by giving it a 1, telling DOMO to count it, and then everything that does have a completed date, give a 0, don't count it. Then we can take this beast mode and we're going to apply it under filters. And we are going to only look at ones where, and we're not aggregating, so we only want those tasks with a 1 value. Because remember, 1 means we're counting it, 0 means we're not. So if we're only counting those that are incomplete, you'll see that, I don't even know if those numbers change actually. And not really. And the reason for this is we don't actively use the template that this our DOMO sandbox is connected to. So I can't show you, unfortunately, how this would look in a live template because it would not. It's a big no-no to share client templates and data. So we're stuck with our kind of fake data in our test sandbox Filevine, which again, we are not actively working like a firm would. So we want incomplete tasks is greater than or equal to 1. I do not want this assigned to. And then we might want to, oh, we don't have phase in. We'll pull the phase one in a different one. So this is being added as a criteria, not a filter. If you wanted to add a filter, which would be an option that you can click and select to narrow things down a little bit, you can find that data point over here and drag it in, and you're simply going to, for that one, display as a quick filter. So a criteria is going to be added and not displayed as a quick filter because you're setting the value. You don't want your users to be able to change the value. You're setting the value. You are not showing it as a quick filter. For anything you do want to see as a filter, you would go ahead and display as a quick filter. And so, for example, we may want to add assign to as a filter. We don't want to set a set value. We want to have a choice to choose any of our users, and we can hit apply. And let me reorder that. Let me go ahead and save here, and we'll pop back in a minute to look at one of the other beast modes. So now when I come in, and with your DOMO cards, you can't drill in place. which means from this view, you can't click on your chart and drill into the data from there. If you click on the chart from here, you're going to actually be filtering your data. So if you want to drill into your data, you would go into click the title to go into the card first, and then drill into your data by clicking a part of the card. You'll see my filters are available over here. So there was the note text that we had as a filter, and then we have assigned to. We are currently pulling tasks assigned to everybody, but if we wanted to simply look at tasks assigned to a specific user, let's pick me, for example, you could unselect all and then choose the user that you want to pull up the outstanding task. That's not so bad. It's pretty reasonable. Much better than our dev team and Jen and our Vine Skills team. All right, so let's go back into the card and take a look at some of the other formulas that we're using to make this card work. Go back into our analyzer. So we've learned how to use a formula to identify and separate values that are null versus values that aren't. You can use that same concept for any number of things. So, for example, if you want to separate your reports into pre-lit versus lit, and you designate that in your Filevine by using a date transfer to lit field, then you could use a similar formula using that field for date transfer to lit. It would simply be case when date transfer to lit is null, then 1, which is going to be your pre-lit cases, else 0, which will be your lit cases, and then end. And then you can apply that to a active case count board, anything like that. Even a settlements board, when you want to pull your pre-lit settlements versus things that settled in lit. Unless, of course, you may settle a portion of the claim in pre-lit and then the other portion in lit, in which case you'd want that field to live in your settlement collection item. Okay, so if we come back here to, let's take a look at total due today, total overdue, total pending not due. So here we have, you'll see that we are using that null formula again, right? So we're using, again, that completed date is null, but we want to add something to this formula. So we want to pull only incomplete tasks, right? But we also want to only pull those that are due today. So we don't want all incomplete tasks, past due, future due. We want just today's task. Now, when you get this sample cards from Filevine, when you first get into your DOMO, you are going to see that this is hard-coded with an actual date. Obviously, that's not what we want going forward. We want it to be flexible. We always want it to be looking at the current date. So you have a today formula in Excel. The DOMO version of that is going to be current date. So now we are looking at when the current date equals the target date. So when today's date equals the target date for the task, and the completed date has no value, then count it, else don't count it. This is going to give us our tasks that are not only incomplete, but those that are also only due today. And this value, because it's not a static value, it's not a static date, will pull whatever the current date is that you're looking at this card. Go ahead and validate, save calculated field. And you'll see I have none due today because they're all past due. And you can use something similar to those that are overdue versus those that are due in the future, right? So if we come back into overdue, here we're going to look at a date differential. So the difference between today's date and the target date. So before we were just looking for tasks where those dates were equal. Now it gets a little bit more complicated because we want anything that is not due today, but was due yesterday or before yesterday. We're going to use a date difference. This is kind of the equivalent of in Excel, literally just putting in two dates and subtracting them, right? So date difference is going to give us the difference between the current date, so today's date, less the target date. If we have those data points switched, we'd be looking at future tasks. We are looking at past tasks. So we want today's date minus the target date, because today's date will be greater. And we want only those where the value is greater than or equal to 1. You could also use a formula where it's greater than 0, right? Because today's date, those due today, the date difference would be 0 between the target date and the current date. Anything greater than 0 would be due before today. But we'll just change that back. So greater than or equal to 1. And where the completed date is empty, so it is incomplete, count it, otherwise don't count it. All right, I'm going to pause there. And does anybody have any questions so far about any of this, or even MP has a question, a formula that you just haven't been able to figure out that I might be able to help you with? MP, were you waving or did you have a question? My mistake. Oh, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure. I didn't want to move on. Okay, so let's hop over. I just want to show you some other examples. Does Periscope version of, yes, so you can use data flows. I'm actually going to show some examples of data flows in a moment, or some examples where you may need to join or append or even put in a column, create a column with a calculation at the data set level. So thank you.
Sorry, a question came in maybe before you move on. Does Periscope version of DOMO all use of data flows?
Yeah, you can use anything, within the ETL. So anything available within the ETL to create a data flow. So that brings up a good point, though. The beast modes are connected to the data set, but at the card level. So as long as you save your beast modes to the data set, that beast mode will be available for any card connected to the data set. But this is just at the card level. There are times where it's appropriate to put in a formula at the data set level. So before we get to that, real quick, I just want to show you something else, a couple of other things. So if we go into our intake metrics here, actually, let's go into our active inventory. You may see, if you have been set up by someone else, if you've been set up by a partner or by Filevine initially, you may see a card like this, where you have something that says missing. So missing case type, missing assigned paralegal, missing whatever. You'll never see missing phase, because phase is captured automatically by Filevine. But some of these other data points require you to enter, a user to enter the data. Your data is as good as the user's entering it, right? And users are human, and sometimes it's a training issue. Sometimes it's just an apathy issue. Sometimes, like, who knows what it is, right? But sometimes our users don't enter the data that we need as administrators to make business decisions that are good for the business. What I do is put in a formula so that instead of seeing a column here with just a blank value underneath it, I give it a name. I apply a formula to give it the name missing lead attorney, or missing referral source, missing case type, whatever it may be. And the reason for that is that it allows us to drill into the data to find which those two are. In this particular case, which two cases are missing an attorney. Obviously, you could do that in Filevine by running a report for whatever data point that we're using here, whether it's the attorney in the team section or the attorney in the case summary, run a report for any cases missing that value. But you're already in here, and it's so much easier if you can just from here drill into the data and identify what those two are, export that Excel and send it on to the person who's supposed to enter that data, right? If you do not apply a beast mode to give this column a name, DOMO doesn't know what to do with it. You won't be able to drill into finding which those two are from here. So when I do this, I can drill in, and it's going to pull those two cases that are missing the lead attorney. From here, I have the ability to share this. I can send an export as an Excel. It's going to download that Excel. From there, I can grab it, pop it into an email, send it on to my intake team or my management team, whoever it is who's going to be responsible for figuring out what data is supposed to be here, right? And the way we apply those, that particular beast mode is very similar to that case when null formula I used for previously for the tasks. So here's the beast mode here. It is this one here. And it's, so in common language, when the lead attorney is missing, then call it missing attorney, missing lead attorney. And you can put whatever you want here. Important to note that you do not use quotations, you use apostrophes. So whatever you want to name it, missing paralegal, missing referral source, whatever it is, you put here. So when the lead attorney's name is missing, then missing lead attorney, else, and then you pull the data point back in. So when that data point is null, give it a missing attorney name. When it's not, pull in the data from the data point, essentially. Always remember to click Save Calculation to the data set so that you don't have to set up the beast mode in every card connected to that data set that you want to use it in. So that's a really helpful tip. You are going to find that there's a lot of data cleanup that you need to do when you first get into DOMO. That's normal. I have a lot of firms that so excited, you know, they see the demo, they see one of Craig Goldfarb's webinars, whatever it may be, right? And they're excited. And then they get in and they get their cards set up, and what their cards show them is that people are not consistently entering data, and then they're sad. And I don't mean to make you sad, but that is normal and easy to fix by putting in these beast modes to drill into the data where it's missing, sending it on to the person who needs to fix it. So let's go into the ETLs. Awesome. I don't know if that beast mode would work. It's possible. We could try it. And DOMO will tell you if your formula doesn't work, by the way. When we click validate, it tests the formula to make sure that it works, that it's a valid formula. Yep, see that? Yep, that works too. Missing. And DOMO does have fantastic help resources that take, also there's a little bit of a learning curve. They have a university where you can watch videos, and they have beast mode, kind of like tutorials, like examples. A lot of what is available I have not found a single example or video that is connected to legal data. So there we go. You have to kind of interpret it and then figure out how to apply it to legal data. But if you come here, there's community forums, there's a blog, there's a lot. I actually had one that I couldn't figure out, and in one of the forums, posted a question. It was answered almost immediately. It was incredibly helpful. So just know that that's available to you if you are going to embark upon this DOMO journey on your own. You are not without resources. The DOMO community is incredibly helpful. All right, so let's go and look at the ETL function. The ETL function is going to help you in some scenarios like this. You have more than one template in Filevine. You want to view certain data points all in one DOMO card. And you can't do that in Filevine because you need a report for each template. So you're still going to set up in Filevine, you will set up a report for each template. So there are some data points across different law types that would make sense to group together. Case counts, fees, perhaps, right? Other data points that really don't make any sense because those law types are very different. So what you'll do is you'll set up reports for each law type. And in the example where we want to perhaps combine case counts for all of our law types together into one card so that we could see all of our staff in one card and the number of cases assigned to them, what we would do is just have a project info. So one of your reports is always going to be a report with all of your static data points you want to visualize. It's also going to contain your client demographic information, phase information, staff assignments, case type, intake metrics. All of that will be like in your static report. Call it whatever you want. I usually call it project info or case info. And then you'll need one of those for each of your templates. From there, you have the ability to come into your data and combine the reports here so that all of it comes into one card. And you do that by doing an ETL. So you'll see up at the top there was Magic Transform, and you can come in here and grab multiple input data sets. And you have a couple of options. You can blend your data sets if all of the column names are exactly the same. So I did have a client that actually had two templates that were exact copies of each other. And that's because they wanted their medical malpractice stuff handled in a separate template. So they built out a personal injury template. Then they just copied it in again to their environment and named it the med mal template. So all of the field names across the entire template had the exact same names with the exception of a few that got added after that. So if you have done that, then you can use a blend option. But if you have data sets that have different names, so you have a PI practice, you have a comp practice, you have a social security practice, you probably did not set up the fields with a consistent naming convention across the templates unless you had worked with someone who initially told you, you knew you were going to be in DOMO, Periscope, and someone told you it was important, so now you do. You're going to have to rename some of the fields. It's not impossible, it just gets a little more complicated. So this would be kind of an example of where we would do that. We would grab all of our data sets here, and then these are our ETL options. So we can combine columns, replace text, we could split columns. You can do date operations calculations. So if you wanted to do the date difference here, you could do that. If you wanted to add a formula, so I use this sometimes for templates for firms where we need to know the difference between the original balance. So we want paid, right? What's been paid? And some templates have an original balance and a final balance, but for whatever reason, they don't have a paid field for each provider. and we want to add that in. If we add the field in our template and we wait for our people to get around to populate it, it's never going to happen. We're going to have bad data for years, for months. But because you have the data you need to do the calculations, you can do them within DOMO by just adding a formula here. It'll create a new column for paid. That is something, oddly, that if you're going to create numerical values you want to do at the data set level, you can apply that beast mode as a beast mode at the card level, but for some reason, DOMO doesn't recognize that as a numerical value, so you can't aggregate it. It recognizes it as like a, not as a measure, but like as a text field. So that's something you'd want to do at the data set level. I use that a lot, add formula. I also use select columns a lot, where I just want to pull in certain columns from a template or from a report. And that's actually going to be the first step before you join reports from different templates. You're going to want to select the columns for each report, where only the ones that have those common data points that you want to visualize together. Otherwise, you're going to be having issues with all sorts of errors when you try to join them and they have differing columns. So let's say, for example, I want these, first primary, project type, client name, paralegal name. We'll just use those for now. And we're going to select the same columns for all of them. I'll do them in the same order just to make it easy. Client name. And we'll just join 2 for now so that we don't spend forever doing this and run out of time before we get to the good stuff. And then paralegal full name.
It was the third one. You found. Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Thanks. So you may find, and so I typically do an audit where I literally make a list of all of the fields I want to pull in before I set up the reports, because the first couple of times I did this, I found that I had to keep going. I kept missing data points and fields and having to go back to add them to my report. And then you have to push it manually. So it updates and pushes to the S3 bucket right away, because the reports currently only push once in the morning, and then you have to manually grab it from DOMO. And it was, then I would hit my max number of manual pushes for the day and have to wait till the next day. So I definitely recommend mapping out which fields you need first, so that you're not spending a ton of time going back to your reports to add fields. And then we're going to come to combine data, and we are going to join these. If you have a static settlement section, you can use this concept as well, where, so static settlement section, you would have settlement fields for settlement 1, fields for settlement 2, fields for settlement 3. You don't want to have to have 3 different cards in DOMO, 1 for each settlement. You want to see all of your settlement, all of your fees in one card. You could use this same example. So we are going to come and join our data, and we have to choose which data set or our type of join. So our left table is currently the one that says select columns. It's this, and I could have renamed it. I just simply did not. And our right table is this one here. Our join options include only matching rows found in both data sets. No, because we're combining reports from 2 different templates, there will be no matching rows. There will be no matching project names or client names. Left outer would be to include all rows from the left that match the right. You would use this when joining, for example, a task report with a case info report. Say, for example, you want to be able to group, you have an option for legal team, a drop down, where each case you pick a legal team. That custom data point is not available in a task or audit report, because task and audit reports only pull Filevine standard, this Filevine standard field, the task field, the audit field. So if you wanted to be able to view tasks grouped by legal team, you would need to combine the task report, join it with a project info report. In that case, it would make sense to take all of your tasks and then take your project info, and for each task, match the project info by project ID and join it to the left. In this case, we want a full outer. We want to have all of our data from both reports, because we will have no common data. We are pulling reports from two different templates. And then we need to assign it an output data set. What do I have here? Configure the data action. Just pick client name, auto fix left. Awesome. All right, and then we can give, you have to give your output data set a name. So this will be combined project info. Save. And then the last thing you need to do is add a trigger. So unless you're going to come in and manually run this report, what you really want is for this report to automatically update anytime either of the two underlying reports receives an updated data from the S3 bucket or from Filevine. So you're going to want to trigger when data sets update. You're going to select both data sets. And we're going to save and run. From there, any of your dashboards where you have your case counts, your active inventory, whatever it may be, you can swap out the data set there. So if we had, cases per paralegal, we pulled in that paralegal data point. We just come into the analyzer and we'd swap out that data set here and grab our data flow. So that's what I think Derek was referring to as a data flow. When you take your data sets and you manipulate them at all with an ETL, whether you're joining them, whether you're filtering them to filter out certain things, adding a formula to find out what a provider's been paid, it's going to create a data flow. Here you go. And you could see the icon looks different. So anything coming in from the S3 bucket, any reports from Filevine are going to have that green bucket icon. And anything where you've created a data flow is going to have the ETL symbol. All right. Any questions? Those should not be too large at all. I know that there was, for a period of time, an issue with, yes, I have encountered problems with reports not being delivered to the S3 bucket, but it was not because they were too large. I had that problem with a couple of clients on Shard A, which was resolved when they were migrated to a different environment. And there was initially an issue. There was at some point an issue with the exporter. So if you find that you have that issue, and that's identified, like you can tell certain reports, it's going to be easier than others to tell if they're not updating, like your audit report, right? Like you'll see if no activities come in and people are logged in. Other reports, it's going to be more difficult to really identify if data is missing. But if you do identify that data is missing, obviously you want to check your data set first to make sure to see the last time it was updated. But DOMO, unless it's down for some reason, is going to grab that report every morning on schedule. So the next place to look is going to be your S3 bucket. Log into your S3 bucket to see if, and I can show you mine. I don't even know where mine is. Hold on. If you, one's fine. So you can see if your reports have been delivered in the S3 bucket because a new one appears each day. So if you look in your S3 bucket and you find that a report hasn't been delivered on a day, so you go into your S3. Thinking about it. I guess I'm not delivering here. So if you go here and you see after your objects have loaded that the last report delivered is not that day, then you know that your, I should turn that off. You know that your reports are not being delivered to S3. And then you should email Filevine support about an issue with the CSV export. Some things to troubleshoot first so that as when they email you back asking if you've done them, you can say yes and move right on to the actual solving of the problem. Some things to troubleshoot first. Go into the report builder, run your report, double check to make sure it is in fact pointed to the S3 bucket and that it is in fact scheduled. I know it seems basic. I know you probably already thought of that, but just telling you, you will be asked that question. So just double check it real quick. Try using the export immediately ASAP option to see if, even though the scheduled report wasn't delivered, if it will export the CSV ASAP. You can try to turn off the scheduling and turn it back on. Last step to troubleshoot would be to create a copy of the report. So save as, name it something slightly different, schedule that to be delivered to the S3 bucket, and then export it on schedule and then export it ASAP. If it exports ASAP, hold, wait till the following morning to see if it exported on schedule. So those are all things to troubleshoot before reaching out to Filevine so that you can let them know I've already done all of these things and they can pass it on right away to the person who can help you. Anything else? All right. Well, Jasmine popped my email address, our email addresses into the chat, so feel free to grab them there. In case you have any follow-up questions, if you have any interest, if you're beyond this point in your DOMO journey and you don't need it, then ignore it. But if you have any interest, I do have like a spreadsheet that I use for commonly used fields that I use to take the inventory when I first get into someone's template. I fill out, it helps me identify the field, find the name in the client's template, log it so that when I go set up my reports, I just use the spreadsheet and instead of at that point trying to go back and forth between the template. It's really for injury law. But so if you practice a type of law that's not injury law, it's not going to be super helpful. But if you think it would be helpful, shoot me an email. I can send it to you. I also have commonly used beast modes, the ones that are already in the sample data, plus a couple of extra that may be helpful. So if you think that'll be helpful, I'm happy to send that as well. Just shoot me an email.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Stephanie. Hopefully you all learned quite a bit about DOMO. Excuse me. Here at Vine Skills, we offer a variety of services. So if you all are interested in getting additional support or help in DOMO, we have team members that can kind of help you along your path or journey there. Anything Filevine related, we can kind of help with. Feel free to reach out to Stephanie or myself and we can get you pointed in the right direction. I also included a link to our Filevine training videos. Stephanie mentioned it at the beginning of the call. All of these sessions are recorded, and so you have an opportunity to kind of go back, look at these sessions. There are also some other videos that aren't necessarily free help sessions. They're just helpful videos that our team has created. So feel free to poke around in there, watch videos, get updates there. And as always, hopefully we see you next week. Thanks so much for coming. And again, if you need help, feel free to reach out. Thanks, Stephanie.
Bye, guys.